You know that specific suffocating silence that happens right before a car crash? The exact fraction of a second when the tires lose their final grip on the asphalt. The screech of metal hasn't started yet, and physics just silently takes the wheel. That is precisely what the hum of the air conditioning sounded like in Ryan's office. It was a Friday afternoon, the kind of gray, lifeless Manhattan Friday that makes you question every life choice that didn't involve moving to a quiet goat farm in Vermont. I was sitting across from Ryan Hardy, the 32-year-old chief executive officer who wore custom Italian sneakers that cost more than my first car and possessed a bright, practiced smile that didn't quite reach his dead, shark-like eyes. He was leaning back in his chair, tapping a solid gold pen against his front teeth. Click, click, click. It was the rhythmic, irritating sound of a time bomb. "Walter," he started, using that soft, sympathetic tone usually reserved for euthanizing family pets. "You know, we are pivoting. We are moving toward a leaner, more agile methodology. We are trimming the fat to let the muscle breathe." I stared at him, my expression blank. I have been in this corporate game far too long to know when I am being hustled by an amateur. The board and I, well, mostly I, because I am steering this ship, we have been looking closely at the equity pool, Ryan continued, his eyes darting to the fake fungus plant in the corner because he couldn't hold my gaze. And frankly, the legacy options. The ones my father handed out like candy, back in the early days, they are clogging the capitalization table. They are dead weight, Walter, and we are a family here. Families make sacrifices for the greater good. Family, I repeated. The word tasted like battery acid on my tongue. Exactly, he beamed, thinking he had landed the plane without a scratch. "So, we are restructuring your stock options, the advisory ones. They are being canceled effective immediately. We are issuing new grants to the engineering team. The guys actually building the future, you know? But hey, we are keeping you on salary for the transition period. We are not monsters." He pushed a document toward me across the polished mahogany desk. It was a single-page notice of equity forfeiture. I looked down at the paper. Then I looked at Ryan. He was sweating just a little, right along the hairline where his expensive hair plugs were fighting a losing battle. He expected me to cry, or scream, or throw the heavy crystal coaster sitting on his desk. He was braced for the hysterical older employee routine, the speech about how I gave the best years of my life to this firm. He didn't know who I actually was. He saw Walter Vance, the quiet corporate governance consultant, the man who sat in the back of meetings taking notes, the man who quietly reminded people about compliance training and updated the employee handbook. He saw a fixture like the office water cooler, or the printer that always jammed on tray 3. He didn't see the architect. I didn't pick up the pen. I didn't touch the paper. I just folded my hands in my lap, placing one thumb over the other, pressing down until the nail turned white. "Is that all, Ryan?" I asked. My voice was steady, flat, the audio equivalent of a flatlining heart monitor. He blinked, confused by the complete lack of drama. "Oh, yeah, I mean human resources will send you the updated compensation package, minus the equity. But Walter, really, thank you for being understanding. It is just business." "Just business," I echoed. I stood up. My knees popped, a sharp sound that seemed deafening in the glass conference box. I smoothed the jacket of my charcoal suit, a suit I bought 13 years ago when his father, Gerald Hardy, begged me to come save his chaotic little startup from a devastating federal audit. "I will get back to work then," I said. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I closed it softly, with a click that sounded like a lock engaging. As I walked back to my desk, a small cubicle tucked away near the server room, far from the open-plan collaboration zones where the 20-somethings threw frisbees and drank kombucha, I felt a strange sensation. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't fear, it was the cold, metallic taste of absolute clarity. Ryan thought he had just cut off a withered limb. He thought he had cleared the capitalization table for his big, shiny acquisition. He thought he was the smartest man in the room because he spoke the loudest. He had no idea that he had just tried to evict the landlord. I sat down at my desk. I unlocked my computer. I opened a local folder labeled Archive Do Not Delete, nested deep inside 3 other folders labeled Tax Receipts. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to sue, not yet. I was going to wait, because Ryan had forgotten the very first rule of corporate governance. Read the bylaws. Read the amendments. Read the fine print his father signed when the company was 4 days away from bankruptcy and couldn't make payroll. He wanted to play family. Fine, we could play family. We could play the part where the matriarch reminds the spoiled children exactly who owns the house. I stared at the screen, the blue light reflecting in my reading glasses. The cursor blinked. Let the games begin, I thought, and for the first time in years, I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf watching a sheep lock itself inside the slaughterhouse. To understand why Ryan's power play was roughly as intelligent as sticking a fork into a toaster, you have to go back to when this company was 5 people in a sublet basement in Queens that smelled of mildew. It was 15 years ago. Gerald, the founder and Ryan's father, called me at 4 in the morning. I was working at a mid-tier firm then, billing hours and dying slowly. Walter, Gerald had rasped, his voice sounding like gravel in a blender. I am done. The regulators are sniffing around the Series A round. The investors are pulling their term sheets. I cannot pay the lawyers. I cannot pay you. I cannot pay anyone. I should have hung up. I should have gone back to sleep and let Gerald's dream die the death it probably deserved. But Gerald had this chaotic, magnetic energy. He was a mess, but he was a brilliant mess. I am coming over, I said. When I got there, the office looked like a crime scene where the murder weapon was bureaucracy. Papers were scattered everywhere, along with unopened notices from the Internal Revenue Service. Gerald was sitting on the floor, surrounded by empty takeout containers, looking like a man who had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had handed him a tax bill. And there was Ryan. He was 17 then, an intern. He was sitting in the corner, playing games on his mobile phone, wearing oversized headphones, completely oblivious to the fact that his inheritance was currently swirling down the drain. He looked up at me, gave a vague nod, and went back to flinging digital birds at digital pigs. That was the dynamic. Gerald panicked, Ryan ignored, and I fixed. For 8 months I didn't sleep. I lived on vending machine coffee in sheer spite. I rebuilt their corporate structure from the ground up. I standardized contracts, fought auditors, and renegotiated debt with hostile creditors. I was the janitor of their legal mess, scrubbing the grime off the ledger until it shined. When the dust finally settled, the company was saved, but there was literally zero liquidity. Gerald sat me down on a folding chair in that damp basement. Walter, I cannot pay your invoices. I have nothing, he said. I know, Gerald, I replied. I was exhausted. My hair was a mess, and I had been wearing the same shirt for 3 days. But I can give you this, Gerald said. He slid a document across the table. It was a convertible advisory agreement. It was a weird Frankenstein's monster of a contract. It is shares, Walter, Gerald explained, his eyes bloodshot. Advisory shares, Class B. But here is the kicker. I am putting in a clause, a loyalty clause. If the company fails to declare and pay dividends on any class of stock for 30 consecutive months, or if the board of directors fails to meet for a fiscal year, these shares convert. Convert to what? I asked, squinting at the legal language. Voting stock? Gerald whispered. Super voting stock, a 16-to-1 ratio. It is a poison pill, Walter. If I ever lose control, or if the vultures come circling and stop paying us, this kicks in. You become the fail-safe. I looked at Ryan in the corner, still useless, still playing games. Then I looked at Gerald, who was trusting me to be the keeper of the keys. Why me? I asked. Because you are the only one who actually reads the paperwork, Walter, Gerald said. I signed it. He signed it. We notarized it right there with a stamp I kept in my briefcase. I filed it away, not in the main digital repository. Gerald was paranoid about hackers, but in the physical archives and a personal copy in my fireproof safe at home. Years passed. The company grew. Gerald eventually retired, stepping into a chairman emeritus role and playing golf in Florida, pretending not to notice his son's mismanagement. Ryan took over as chief executive officer. Ryan, who never read anything longer than a message on his phone. Ryan, who treated me like the office furniture. Ryan, who saw governance specialist on my door and assumed it meant glorified secretary. He didn't know about the clause. He never dug into the historic filings. He only cared about the shiny new valuation metrics. But the clock had been ticking. Condition 1. Unpaid dividends. The company had never paid a single dividend. They reinvested everything into growth hacking and Ryan's corporate expense account. That was 15 years of non-payment. Check. Condition 2. Board inactivity. Ryan hated formal board meetings. He thought they were stifling innovation. He had replaced formal board meetings with strategy retreats in Aspen. Legally, those didn't count. There had not been a quorum certified. Minutes recorded board meeting in 4 years. Check. The conversion had happened silently and automatically 4 years ago. According to the piece of paper sitting in my safe, the paper yellowing slightly with age, the paper stained with a single drop of coffee from a night in the basement, I didn't just have stock options. I held a controlling interest. Out of the 10 million outstanding shares, Ryan held 3.2 million, and the investors held 4.8 million. The employee pool held 1 million. My original grant was 1 million shares. But under the 16-to-1 supervoting ratio, those converted shares carried the voting weight of 16 million. The total voting pool wasn't 10 million anymore. It was 25 million votes, and I held 16 million of them. That was 64% of the voting interest of the entire company. And Ryan was walking around, strutting like a rooster, unaware that the fox was already sleeping in the henhouse, holding the deed to the farm. Invisibility is a slow process. It doesn't happen overnight. It is like erosion. First, they stop inviting you to the strategy lunches. Then, you fall off the email threads for the high-level projects. Then, they move your desk. 8 months before Ryan called me into his office to cancel my equity, they moved me. I used to be right next to the executive suite, a strategic location where I could hear the hum of decisions being made. Then one Monday morning, I came in to find my boxes packed. We are creating a wellness zone for the developers, the office manager, a 27-year-old named Chloe who communicated primarily in emojis, told me. So we moved you to the annex. It is quieter, better for whatever it is you do. The annex was a glorified storage closet near the server racks. It was cold. It hummed with the sound of fans cooling terabytes of data. It was where they put things they didn't want to look at, broken chairs, outdated promotional banners, and me. I became a ghost. I would walk down the hallway to get coffee. The good coffee machine was in the main kitchen, but I was unofficially banished to the machine in the basement, and people would look right through me. New hires didn't even know my name. One afternoon, a guy named Brody, because of course his name was Brody, stopped me near the elevator. He was wearing a vest over a t-shirt and holding a skateboard. He was the new vice president of brand evangelism. "Hey," he said, snapping his fingers. "You are in human resources, right? The toilet on the 6th floor is clogged. Someone tried to flush a salad." I stared at him. I was wearing a silk shirt and holding a binder containing the intricate details of our Delaware tax nexus. "I am in corporate governance." "Brody," I said, my voice cold. Right. Governance, human resources operations." "Same thing," he laughed, already looking at his phone. "Just get a plunger. It smells like failure in there." He walked away. I didn't get a plunger. I went back to my desk and added his name to my mental list. Brody, future unemployed person. But invisibility had a perk. When people think you are furniture, they talk freely in front of you. They leave sensitive things on the printer. They forget you have administrator access to the shared drives because they assume you don't know how to use a computer. That is how I saw the actual numbers. Ryan was ramping up for the sale. The big exit. Rumors were flying about a $500 million acquisition by a massive conglomerate, Omnicorp. Our earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization needed to look stellar. But they weren't stellar, they were mediocre. So Ryan was getting creative. I watched the files update in real time on the server. I saw the adjusted spreadsheets. They were moving operational expenses into capital expenditures to artificially inflate profit. They were counting projected revenue as recognized revenue. It was classic, sloppy accounting fraud. The kind of stuff that works for a quarter until the auditors actually open the hood. I sat in my cold corner by the servers, wrapped in a cashmere scarf, watching the digital trail of lies grow. "You are getting sloppy, Ryan," I whispered to the screen. He was cutting corners on compliance. He was ignoring regulations. He was skipping the board approvals for major spending, approvals that technically needed my signature, though he thought he didn't need anyone's permission. Every day I saved a copy. Every altered invoice, every sketchy email thread where he told the chief financial officer to make the numbers work, or he would find someone who could. The cost of my invisibility was high. My pride was bruised, and my professional identity was temporarily erased. I was the old guy in the basement to these people. But the return on investment was going to be astronomical. While they were playing ping pong and drinking fancy coffee upstairs, planning how to spend their millions, I was building a dossier. I was constructing a coffin, nail by nail, document by document. They thought I was obsolete. They didn't realize that in a company built on smoke and mirrors, the person who holds the flashlight is the most dangerous person in the world. I checked the time. It was 7 in the evening. The office was getting loud. Beer Friday. I could hear the music thumping through the floorboards. I packed my bag. I took my hard drive. I walked out past the reception desk. Chloe waved without looking up from her screen. "Have a good weekend," she chirped. "I will," I said, and I meant it. Because this weekend I was going to open the safe. My apartment on the Upper West Side is the complete opposite of the startup office. It is quiet, orderly, and smells of beeswax and old paper. There are no beanbag chairs, and there is no neon signage encouraging me to hustle harder. That Friday night, after Ryan had informed me that my equity was canceled, I did not drink wine or cry. I made a pot of very strong black tea, put on my reading glasses, and knelt before the floor safe in my bedroom closet. The heavy dial spun with satisfying clicks. Left to 45, right to 22, left to 8. The steel door swung open. Inside, stacked neatly next to my papers, was the file. I carried it to my dining room table, spreading the documents under the warm light. I bypassed the standard incorporation papers and went straight for the amended and restated shareholders agreement dated 15 years ago. I turned to page 18, clause 9.2. I ran my finger over the text, reciting it like a prayer I had memorized a decade ago. In the event that the company fails to pay dividends on any class of stock for 30 consecutive months, or the board of directors fails to convene a quorum-certified meeting for 12 consecutive months, the advisory Class B shares held by Walter Vance shall automatically convert into super-voting shares at a 16-to-1 ratio. I sat back in my chair. Ryan thought he had canceled my options. But you cannot cancel stock that is already vested, converted, and legally metamorphosed into a controlling interest. He could stop issuing future grants, and he could fire me as an employee, but he couldn't fire me as the majority shareholder without a vote. And he couldn't win a vote because I was the vote. I looked at the date on the conversion clause. The trigger date was 4 years ago. For 4 years I had been the silent owner of the company. I had let Ryan play chief executive officer and pretend to be a god. Why? Because loyalty is a hard habit to break. Because Gerald was my friend and Ryan was his son. I kept hoping that Ryan would grow up. But today, he tried to erase me. He broke the social contract, so I was going to enforce the legal one. I pulled out a fresh pad and started drafting a motion to intervene. I needed to time this perfectly. If I revealed my hand too early, Ryan might try to scuttle the deal, burn the company down out of spite, or tie me up in litigation. I needed to wait until the moment of maximum leverage. The moment when backing out was impossible and the pen was hovering. The signing was scheduled for next Thursday. I had 8 days to play the role of the defeated compliant ex-employee. On Tuesday, 3 days before the signing, Ryan hosted what he called a pre-victory board meeting. It wasn't a real meeting, of course. It was just a celebration in the conference room with the 4 lead venture capital investors who were about to cash out. I wasn't invited, but I walked right in holding a tray of water bottles. It was humiliating, yes, a man with a law degree and 18 years of corporate governance experience playing waiter, but I needed to be in that room. "Walter," Ryan said, his voice dripping with fake friendliness. "Just set those down. Thanks." He turned back to the investors, including a guy named Dean. "The cap table is clean. We have optimized the option pool for the acquisition. Omnicorp is ready to wire the funds Thursday morning." "And the founder's stock?" Dean asked. "Gerald's stake?" "Dad is on board." Ryan waved a hand dismissively. "He is in Florida. I have his proxy." Actually, I thought, Gerald never gives proxies. "And the redundancy?" Dean asked, gesturing briefly toward me. "He meant me Hull," Ryan said, his voice dropping a decibel. "We offered a generous severance. The equity was retired. It is a non-issue. I arranged the bottles. I was invisible." "Excellent," Dean said, "because Omnicorp's legal team is brutal. If they find a single discrepancy, they will retrade the deal and drop the valuation by 30% just for fun." There are no discrepancies, Ryan insisted. We are ready. He raised a bottle to the liquidity event. I stood by the door holding the empty tray. They were toasting to a crime. Ryan looked at me for a second, and I saw a flicker of nervous energy in his eyes. You can go, Walter, he said. I walked out. As I headed back to the annex, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Gerald. Walter, Ryan says you are leaving. What is going on? I stopped in the hallway. I typed back. Just a restructuring. Don't worry, Gerald. I am handling the paperwork. We will see you Thursday, Gerald replied. I will be there for the signing. Need you to look over the final documents for me. I smiled. I am already looking, Gerald. I am already looking. Wednesday arrived, the day before the end of the world. The digital data room was a secure server. I still had admin credentials. Ryan was sloppy and hadn't revoked my access. I logged in from the annex and downloaded the capitalization table. It was a work of fiction. Row 42 showed Walter Vance, shares 0, status forfeited. He had deleted my equity from the ledger. This was federal securities fraud under Section 10B of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 and Rule 10b-5. If Omnicorp bought the company based on this spreadsheet, the lawsuit would bankrupt the company. The buyer's counsel requested original copies of early advisor agreements. Ryan uploaded a consolidated file. I downloaded it and saw he had omitted the convertible agreement containing Clause 9.2, actively concealing my controlling interest. I had a choice. I could call the buyer's lawyers now and blow the deal, or wait for Ryan to sign the representation before intervening. I dialed Gerald. Walter, Gerald said. I am flying up for the signing. Ryan says it is a done deal. Why do I feel like I am walking into a trap? Because you are, Gerald, I said. He erased me. He scrubbed the capitalization table. He is selling the company without disclosing the conversion clause. He is going to commit fraud, silence on the line. Gerald muttered, the arrogant idiot. He thinks because he ignored the clause. It doesn't exist. Not if we are in the room, Gerald. Bring your copy from your safe. I never travel without my insurance policy, Gerald said. Meet me in the lobby tomorrow at 7:50 in the morning. Thursday morning, I stood in the lobby wearing my Navy power suit. Gerald walked in at 7:50 sharp, his jaw set, and we rode the elevator to the penthouse floor in silence. Ryan was adjusting his tie. Dad, you made it. Then he saw me. Walter, I thought you were clearing out your desk. I am, I said. Just wanted to say goodbye to your father. Make it quick, Ryan said. We need the room clear of non-essentials. Gerald gripped his cane. Ryan, did you review the table with Walter? Dad, stop, it is handled. Ryan rolled his eyes. We walked into the conference room. 6 lawyers from Omnicorp sat on one side, led by attorney Eleanor Finch, a serious woman with steel-gray hair. On the other side sat Ryan, our general counsel Peter, and Gerald. I stood in the back. Eleanor Finch opened her binder. We have reviewed the disclosures. The wire instructions are queued for the $500 million deal. However, we found a discrepancy. She slid a paper across. There is a historic shareholder agreement referenced in the older audits that doesn't appear in your ledger. A Class B convertible instrument, Ryan laughed nervously. That is ancient history. It was retired. Right, Peter? Peter nodded. Eleanor looked over her glasses. You have the signed release? We gave notice, Ryan said. The options were canceled. Ops are one thing, Eleanor said. Voting stock is another. If this instrument converted, it is equity. Without a signed release, we have a problem. Who is the holder? Walter Vance, Eleanor read. I took a step forward. That would be me, I said. Walter, what are you doing? Get out, Ryan shouted. I walked to the table and looked at Eleanor. I am Walter Vance, and I haven't signed anything. I opened my folder. Here is the original agreement. Records showing 0 dividends for 15 years, and minutes proving no board meetings occurred. Clause 9.2 triggered 4 years ago. My shares converted. I hold 64% of the voting interest. The silence was absolute. He doesn't own anything, Ryan shouted. Sit down, Ryan, Gerald said, his voice quiet but firm. He owns it. He always has. Eleanor closed her binder. It appears the person sitting in the CEO's chair doesn't have the authority to sell this company, she said. Walter, are you the controlling shareholder? I am, I said. Then why are we talking to him? She asked. I have no idea, I replied. Ryan, you are in my seat. Ryan stood up, shaking. You will hear from my lawyers. This is entrapment. This is corporate governance, I said. Goodbye, Ryan. He stormed out. I sat down. Eleanor, I apologize for the drama. I have reviewed the term sheet. The valuation is fair. Here is a written consent form under Delaware General Corporation Law Section 228 ratifying the merger. But we are making one adjustment. The employee option pool is being fully reinstated out of my share. The staff gets paid first, Gerald smiled. And Ryan? Eleanor asked. Ryan remains a minority shareholder with a 12% stake, I said. He is removed from management immediately. For 5 hours, we redlined the contract. At 3 in the afternoon, the wire transfer was initiated. My phone buzzed. I walked Gerald to the elevator. You did good, Walter, he said. I just read the fine print, Gerald, I said. I went back to the office, sat in the high-backed leather chair, and slowly opened my laptop screen. I sent one email to the entire company. Subject: Update regarding leadership. To all staff, from Walter Vance, Chief Executive Officer. The acquisition is complete. Your jobs are safe. We are a family here, and this time the father is in charge. Get back to work. I closed my laptop. Real power doesn't announce itself. It simply asserts.